carriage wheels crunched over the gravel, the sound loud and final in the quiet English afternoon. Inside, Lady Geneviève de La Fontaine smoothed the silk of her traveling gown for the 10th time. Her hands were trembling. Just slightly. "Stop fidgeting," Lisette said from the seat opposite her. Lisette Marchand had been Geneviève's companion since they were girls in France, and she was the only person in the world allowed to speak to a marquis's daughter with such bluntness. "You look perfect. You always look perfect." "I feel like a prize mare being delivered to auction," Geneviève admitted, staring out the window at the massive stone structure of Hawthorne Hall rising above the trees. "A month-long stay, to see if we suit." "It is barbaric, Lisette." "It is practical," Lisette corrected. She leaned forward, her dark eyes sharp. "And it is better than the alternative." The alternative hung in the air between them. "Randall." "Do not say his name," Geneviève whispered, though Lisette hadn't spoken it. "I didn't have to," Lisette said softly. "But look at this place, Geneviève. It is solid. It is safe. Let us just pray this Duke of Sunderland isn't like Randall. All pretty words, polished boots, and a heart made of ice." "The Duke is a widower," Geneviève said, lifting her chin. "He has loved before. That suggests he is capable of it. Randall was incapable of loving anything that didn't show him his own reflection." "We shall see." The carriage lurched to a halt. Geneviève took a breath. "Courage," she told herself. "You are the daughter of a marquis. You have survived a broken engagement and the whispers of Paris. You can survive an English duke." The footman opened the door. Geneviève stepped out, expecting fanfare. She expected the duke standing on the steps, perhaps a line of servants, a formal bow. Instead, she found chaos. A trunk was sitting open on the bottom step. A maid was running past with a pile of linens, and the front door was wide open. A harried-looking man with greying hair, the butler presumably, rushed out, nearly colliding with her. "My lady." He looked horrified. He bowed low. "Too fast. Lady Geneviève, we did not expect the carriage for another hour." "Clearly," Geneviève said gently. She signaled for the footman to help Lisette down with Eclair's basket. A small bark came from inside the wicker. "Mr. Henderson, my lady. Henderson." The butler looked as if he might faint. "Please come inside. The wind is picking up." Geneviève walked into the great hall. It was magnificent. High ceilings, ancient stone, portraits of stern ancestors. But the air felt frantic. "Is His Grace, the Duke, at home?" Geneviève asked, pulling off her gloves. Henderson winced. "Ah, that is a complication." Geneviève paused. "A complication?" "He is away, my lady." "Away?" Geneviève turned slowly. "I've traveled for 3 days. He knew the date of my arrival." "Emergency business in London, my lady. He sent a letter to Dover, but you must have missed it. He's expected back. Well, we hope within the week." "The week?" Lisette's voice was sharp. "You expect Lady Geneviève to stay here, unchaperoned, for a week?" "The Dowager Duchess is arriving tomorrow," Henderson said quickly. "And, well," he looked around the empty hall, sweating. "Mr. Henderson," Geneviève said, her voice calm but firm. "What is happening here? Why is there a trunk on the front steps?" Henderson took a handkerchief and wiped his forehead. "That would be Miss Miller's trunk, my lady." "And who is Miss Miller?" "The governess." "I see. Is she traveling?" "She is quitting, my lady, as of—" He checked his pocket watch. 10 minutes ago." Geneviève blinked. "The governess has quit. Today." She said the ghost was too much for her nerves. "The ghost?" "The children, my lady. She calls them spirits of chaos." Geneviève felt a cold prickle of unease. She looked at Lisette. Lisette's eyebrows were so high, they were nearly touching her hairline. "So," Geneviève said slowly, "let me understand. The Duke is gone. The Dowager is not here yet. The governess has quit." "Yes, my lady." "Then, Mr. Henderson," Geneviève asked quietly, "who is watching the children?" A loud crash echoed from the top of the grand staircase. It sounded like a vase shattering, followed by a shriek of laughter and then the thundering of small feet. Geneviève looked up. Three heads popped over the banister of the second-floor gallery. The oldest, a boy of perhaps 11, with dark hair like the portrait above the fireplace. He looked serious, his hands gripping the rail. Beside him, a girl of 8, missing a front tooth, grinning wildly. And peering through the rails at the bottom, a small boy of 5, holding a wooden soldier, his eyes wide and solemn. They stared at her. She stared at them. "They are the children," Genevieve whispered to Henderson. Lord Henry, Lady Sophie, and Lord Thomas. Henderson sighed, looking defeated. "We have gone through 4 governesses in 6 months, my lady. They are spirited." The girl, Sophie, shouted down. "Are you the new one?" Genevieve took a step forward. "The new what, mademoiselle?" "The new wife," Sophie yelled. "Father said number 12 was coming today." Genevieve froze. Number 12. She felt the blood drain from her face. She looked at Lisette. Lisette looked ready to murder someone. "Number 12? Genevieve repeated, her voice barely a whisper. "Sophie," the older boy, Henry, hissed, pulling his sister back. "You aren't supposed to say that." "But she is," Sophie argued. "She looks like the last one, only with better hair." Genevieve felt a sudden, sharp sting in her chest. A month-long stay, to see if we suit. She had thought she was special. She had thought her father had arranged a match with a man who was lonely and looking for a partner. She was just an interview. The 12th interview. "My lady," Henderson stammered. "Please, pay them no mind. Children prattle." "Children speak the truth, Mr. Henderson," Genevieve said. She drew herself up. Her pride, bruised by Randall years ago, had grown a hard shell. She would not let them see her bleed. Not the servants. Not these children. "I assume I have a room?" she asked. "Of course. The blue suite." "Then I should like to retire, immediately." "Wait!" It was the youngest one. Tommy. He had pushed his face through the railings again. "Is that a dog?" Genevieve looked down at the basket Lisette was holding. Eclair had poked his fluffy head out, ears perked, sniffing the air. "Yes," Genevieve said, her voice softening automatically. "His name is Eclair." "Like the pastry?" Sophie asked. "Because he is sweet," Genevieve said. "He's small," Henry said dismissively from the top of the stairs. "Father says small dogs are useless." Genevieve looked up at the boy. He had the Duke's jawline, and, she suspected, the Duke's arrogance. "Your father is not here," Genevieve said, her voice carrying clearly through the hall. "And Eclair is not useless. He's an excellent judge of character." She turned to Henderson. "The blue suite, if you please, and dinner in my room." "But the children, my lady." Henderson looked helpless. "With Miss Miller gone and the nursemaid ill. They usually eat in the nursery, but there is no one to supervise the evening meal." Genevieve paused. She looked at the stairs. 3 pairs of eyes watched her. The heir, the rebel, and the ghost. Waiting to see what she would do. Waiting to see if she would run, just like the governess. Just like the 11 women before her. She had come here to marry a duke. She had expected candlelight dinners and polite conversation. She had not expected to be a warden. "Lisette is right," she thought. "If I leave now, I am the woman who ran away." Again. She took a breath. She removed her hat and handed it to the stunned footman. "Dinner will not be in my room," Genevieve said. She looked directly at Henry. "It will be in the dining room at 6 o'clock. "We don't eat in the dining room," Henry said defiantly. "Father forbids it." "Your father," Genevieve said, starting up the stairs, "is away." She swept past them, Lisette trailing behind with a smug smile. Genevieve didn't look back, but she heard Sophie whisper loudly, "I think this one might stay." "She won't," Henry replied. "None of them stay." Genevieve tightened her grip on her skirts. "Watch me," she thought. The dining room was silent. Painfully silent. Genevieve sat at one end of the mahogany table, the wood stretching out like a dark lake between her and the children. Henry sat at the far end, in the Duke's chair. He looked ridiculous, a small boy in a massive chair, but his expression was dead serious. Sophie and Tommy sat on the sides, their legs swinging nervously. The only sound was the clinking of silver spoons against china soup bowls. "This soup is cold," Henry announced. He dropped his spoon. It made a loud clang. Henderson, standing by the sideboard, stiffened. "My lord, it came directly from the kitchen." "It is cold," Henry insisted. He looked at Genevieve. A challenge. Genevieve didn't look up from her own bowl. She took a sip. "It is perfectly warm, Lord Henry. Perhaps you are simply shivering from the draught in this large empty hall." Sophie giggled. Henry shot her a glare. "We aren't allowed to speak at dinner," Henry said. "Father says silence aids digestion." "Your father," Genevieve said calm, "seems to have a great many rules for a man who is not here to enforce them." "He will be back," Henry said sharply, "and he won't like this. Us eating here with a guest." "I'm not a guest," Genevieve corrected gently. "I'm a prospective bride. There is a difference." "No, there isn't," Henry muttered. "Guests leave. Prospective brides leave faster." Genevieve set her spoon down. She looked down the long table. "You're trying to frighten me, Henry." "I am stating facts." "You're trying to be rude so that I will leave like Miss Miller, like the 11 women before me." Henry didn't answer. He just gripped the arms of his father's chair. "It is a clever strategy," Genevieve admitted. "If I were a governess, I would be terrified. But I am not a governess, and I have endured far worse dining companions than you." "Like who?" Sophie asked, her eyes wide. "Like a man named Randall," Genevieve said. The name tasted bitter, but she said it clearly. "He used to check his reflection in his soup spoon to ensure his cravat was straight. At least you look at the people you are dining with, Henry." Henry blinked. He hadn't expected honesty. He had expected a lecture. "Why are you here?" Henry asked. The defiance cracked, just a little. "Why would you come all the way from France to marry a man you don't know?" "Because," Genevieve said, "my father wishes for an alliance. And because—" She paused. Why had she come? To escape the whispers in Paris? To find safety? "Because," she finished softly, "I was told your father was a good man. A serious man. Was I lied to?" Henry stared at her. For a second, he looked like a little boy who missed his mother. Then the mask slammed back down. "He is a great man," Henry said stiffly. "He is the Duke." "Being a Duke and being a good man are not always the same thing," Genevieve said. She signaled Henderson. "We are finished with the soup. Please bring the next course, and perhaps some warm milk for Tommy. He looks about to fall asleep." Tommy was indeed nodding off, his head drooping toward his plate. As the servants cleared the table, the tension broke slightly. Sophie leaned forward. "Do you know any games?" "Sophie," Henry hissed. "Games?" Genevieve asked. "Card games." "No, hide and seek or tag." Genevieve smiled, a small, genuine smile. "I'm afraid I'm not dressed for tag, Sophie, and French ladies do not run." "See," Henry sneered. "Useless." Genevieve turned her gaze on him. "I did not say I was useless, Henry. I said I do not run. However," she reached into her reticule, which was hanging on her chair. She pulled out a small, intricately folded piece of paper. A bird. Origami. She flicked it across the table. It landed by Tommy's hand. Tommy woke up. He touched the paper bird. "I may not run," Genevieve said, "but I can make things fly." Dinner ended without any more shouting. It wasn't a victory, but it wasn't a defeat. Later, upstairs in the blue suite, Lisette was unpacking Genevieve's trunk. Eclair was curled up on the rug by the fire. "You handled the boy well," Lisette said, shaking out a nightgown. "He is wounded. Wounded animals bite." "He is arrogant," Genevieve sighed, sitting at the vanity and pulling pins from her hair. "He thinks he owns the house. He is 11. He's trying to be his father because his father isn't here." Genevieve looked at Lisette in the mirror. "You are too wise for a lady's maid, Lisette." "And you are too patient for a duke's wife," Lisette shot back. "Randall would have boxed the boy's ears." "Randall," Genevieve said, looking at her reflection, "would have left before the soup was served." "True." Lisette paused. "Genevieve, this isn't what we expected. No duke, no courtship, just a nursery." "I know. We could leave. Tomorrow." We could tell your father the conditions were not as promised. Geneviève touched the silver hairbrush on the table. She thought of Henry's defiant, lonely face. She thought of Tommy touching the paper bird. We cannot leave, Geneviève said quietly. Why? Because of honor. Because they have no one, Lisette. She turned on the stool. Did you see the socks on the little one? Tommy. They were darned, badly. And Sophie's hair. No one has brushed it properly in weeks. The governess didn't care. The Duke is away. The servants are trying, but it is not enough, Lisette finished. I remember, Geneviève said softly, when I was a girl and my mother was always at court. I remember sneaking into the kitchens because the cook was the only one who would talk to me. I remember how cold the main house felt. So I will not leave them in the cold. Not yet. I will stay the month. You are getting attached, Lisette warned. That is dangerous. You are number 12, Geneviève. Remember that. I am not attached, Geneviève lied. I am simply thorough. A knock came at the door. It was very soft, barely a tap. Lisette frowned and went to answer it. She opened the door. No one was there. Hello. Lisette looked into the hallway. Empty. Look down, Geneviève said. Lisette looked down. On the floor, sitting on the velvet carpet, was a small wooden soldier, paint chipped, one arm missing. It was the toy Tommy had been holding at dinner. Geneviève walked over and picked it up. She looked down the dark, empty corridor. He brought it to you, Lisette whispered. A peace offering. Or a test, Geneviève said, closing her hand around the toy. To see if I would throw it away. She walked back into the room and placed the broken soldier gently on her vanity, next to her silver brush. Well, Geneviève said, blowing out the candle, I suppose we shall see what tomorrow brings. Outside, the wind howled around Hawthorne Hall. The Duke was still miles away, but inside, for the first time in months, the house felt a little less empty. It had been raining for 3 days, not a polite French drizzle, but a relentless grey English deluge that turned the gardens into mud and the house into a tomb. Geneviève stood in the nursery doorway. The air smelled of dust and boredom. Henry was staring out the window, tracing raindrops with a finger. Sophie was lying on the rug, sighing loudly every 30 seconds. Tommy was sitting in the corner, clutching the wooden soldier Geneviève had returned to him, looking miserable. I am bored, Sophie announced to the ceiling. Read a book, Henry said without turning around. I've read them all, twice. Then suffer in silence, Henry snapped. Father says boredom is a sign of a weak mind. Father says, Sophie mocked. Father isn't here. Enough, Geneviève said, stepping into the room. The children jumped. They hadn't heard her approach. She was wearing a simple day dress, the color of lavender, and Lisette was right behind her, holding a very eager eclair. My lady, Henry stood up, stiff and formal. We are studying. You are staring at rain, Henry, Geneviève said, and Tommy looks as if he is about to cry. She looked at the little boy. Thunder rumbled in the distance, and Tommy flinched, curling tighter around his toy. He hates the thunder, Sophie whispered. Miss Miller used to lock him in the closet when he cried during storms. Geneviève felt a flash of cold rage that had nothing to do with the weather, locked in a closet. She looked at Lisette. Lisette's eyes were hard. Well, Geneviève said briskly, there will be no closets today. In fact, there will be no nursery today. What do you mean? Henry asked suspiciously. I mean I am cold, and I require hot chocolate, and I do not wish to drink it alone. She clapped her hands. Up, all of you. We're going to the kitchen. Henry looked horrified. The kitchen. We are forbidden from the kitchen. It is downstairs. It is servants' territory. It is the warmest room in the house, Geneviève corrected. Come along. Father will be furious, Henry warned, but he didn't stop her when she picked up Tommy. The boy felt light, too light in her arms. Your father, Geneviève said for the 3rd time that week, is away. The kitchen was a cavernous stone room filled with steam and the smell of roasting meat. When the procession entered, a French noblewoman carrying a child, a maid holding a dog, and two stunned aristocratic children. Mrs. Gable, the cook, nearly dropped a pot of potatoes. My stars! Mrs. Gable wiped her hands on her apron. My lady, is something wrong? Was the luncheon not to your liking? The luncheon was delicious, Mrs. Gable, Genevieve said, setting Tommy down on a sturdy wooden bench near the massive hearth. But we are freezing, and we are bored, and I was hoping you might have chocolate, and perhaps pastry dough. Pastry dough? Mrs. Gable blinked. To bake, Genevieve said. In France, when it rains, we bake. But the children, my lady, can wash their hands, Genevieve said firmly. 10 minutes later, the rules of Hawthorne Hall had been shattered completely. Tommy was sitting on the table, Eclair happily licking flour off the boy's cheek. For the first time since Genevieve arrived, Tommy was giggling. Sophie was covered in flour, rolling out dough with enthusiastic violence. Even Henry had abandoned his dignity. He was standing by the stove, watching Mrs. Gable stir the chocolate, looking hungry. You are making a mess, Henry pointed out, looking at the flour on Genevieve's nose. I'm making memories, Henry. There is a difference. She pressed a strawberry into a tart shell. Here, do this. She handed him a berry. He hesitated. It will not bite you, she said. Henry took the berry. He placed it precisely in the center of the dough. It needs to be centered, for balance. Precisely, Genevieve smiled. You have an eye for structure, like your father. Henry puffed up a little at the compliment. As the tarts baked, filling the kitchen with the scent of butter and jam, the mood shifted from frantic to cozy. They sat around the work table, drinking thick hot chocolate from mugs, not china cups. Did you bake in France? Sophie asked, swinging her legs. Sometimes, when my mother was at court and my father was busy with his estates. Did you have children? Sophie asked innocently. The room went quiet. Lisette stopped stirring her tea. No, Genevieve said softly. No children. Why not? Sophie pressed. You are old. Sophie! Henry choked on his chocolate. You cannot say she is old. Genevieve laughed. I am 24, Sophie, in society that is practically ancient, and to answer your question, I was engaged once, to be married. What happened? Henry asked. He was watching her closely. He changed his mind, Genevieve said. It was a half-truth. He decided he wanted a wife who was more like an ornament, quiet, perfect. Still, like a statue, Tommy asked. Exactly like a statue, Genevieve said, brushing hair off Tommy's forehead. And I'm afraid I'm too fond of dogs and chocolate to be a statue. What was his name? Sophie asked. Randall, Genevieve said. The name didn't hurt as much as it usually did. Perhaps because it was warm in here. Randall, Henry tested the name. He sounds stupid. Henry, Mrs. Gable gasped. He was not stupid, Genevieve said. He was just empty. He looked in mirrors, not at people. She looked at Henry. Never trust a man who looks in the mirror more than he looks at you, Henry. Or a woman, for that matter. The oven door clanged open. Mrs. Gable pulled out the tray of tarts. They were golden, bubbling, and perfect. Hot, hot, Mrs. Gable warned. But for a moment, nobody moved. They just sat there, in the warmth of the fire. A French lady, a maid, a cook, a dog, and 3 motherless children. This is better than the dining room, Tommy whispered. It was the longest sentence he had spoken to her. Genevieve's heart squeezed. Yes, chérie, it is. Suddenly, the heavy oak door at the top of the servants' stairs creaked open. Heavy footsteps descended. The laughter died instantly. Henry jumped off his stool, straightening his jacket. Mrs. Gable froze. Henderson appeared on the stairs, looking pale. My lady, he gasped. My lady, you must come upstairs immediately. Genevieve stood up, wiping flour from her hands. What is it, Henderson? Is the house on fire? No, my lady. Henderson looked terrified. It is the carriage. What carriage? His Grace, Henderson swallowed. The Duke. He has returned. A week early. Genevieve looked down at her flour-covered dress. She looked at the children who had their mouths covered in chocolate. She looked at the kitchen, which looked like a bakery had exploded in it. "He is in the great hall," Henderson whispered, "and the Dowager Duchess is with him." Henry looked at Genevieve, panic in his eyes. "I told you," he whispered. "I told you he would be furious." Genevieve took a breath. She looked at Tommy, who was trembling again. "It is all right," she said, though her own heart was hammering against her ribs. She reached down and picked up the tray of hot tarts. "Henry, wipe your face. Sophie, fix your hair. Lisette, grab the dog." "What are you doing?" Henry asked. "We are going upstairs," Genevieve said, lifting her chin. "And we are going to welcome your father home." "With flour on your nose?" Henry asked. "With tarts," Genevieve corrected. "If he is truly a great man, Henry, he will prefer a warm tart to a cold beau." She walked toward the stairs. "Please," she prayed silently, "please let him be kind. For their sake, if not for mine." She began to climb, the heat of the kitchen fading behind her, the cold reality of the Duke waiting above. The walk from the kitchen to the great hall was the longest walk of Genevieve's life. It had been 3 weeks. 3 weeks of rain, 3 weeks of no governess, 3 weeks of unauthorized baking, bedtime stories, and teaching Tommy that thunder was just angels bowling. She had stopped feeling like a guest. She had started feeling like she lived here. And now the master was home. "Chin up," Genevieve whispered to Henry as they climbed the servants' stairs. "You are a lord. Do not look like a prisoner." "I forgot what he looks like," Henry whispered back, his voice trembling. "Is that bad?" Genevieve's heart broke a little. "No, Henry. It is not bad. It is just time." They emerged into the main corridor. The air here was cooler, smelling of beeswax and rain. They turned the corner into the great hall. It was chaotic. Trunks were piled by the door. Servants were rushing back and forth. And in the center of the chaos stood 2 figures. One was a woman, older, the Dowager Duchess Augusta. The other was him, Nathaniel Ainsworth. He was taller than the portrait in the gallery. Broad shoulders filled out his travel coat, wet with rain. He looked exhausted. He looked stern. He looked like a storm that had finally made landfall. He was speaking to Henderson in a low, controlled voice. "You are telling me," Nathaniel said, "that you sent no letter, no update. We didn't want to worry you, Your Grace. With the business in London. Worry me." Nathaniel ran a hand through his damp hair. "I come home to find the governess gone. And the French guest, is she still here, or did she leave 3 weeks ago like a sensible woman?" "I'm here," Genevieve said. Her voice rang out clear in the hall. Nathaniel turned. The Dowager turned. Genevieve stood at the top of the short flight of stairs. She knew what she looked like. There was flour on her nose. There was a smudge of chocolate on her sleeve. She was holding a tray of steaming jam tarts. And behind her stood his 3 children, also covered in flour, looking at him like he was a stranger. Nathaniel stared. His eyes traveled from her messy hair, to the tarts, to his children. "Good God," the Dowager said. "It appears we have interrupted a bakery." Genevieve walked down the stairs. She moved with the confidence of a woman who had kept this house from falling apart for 21 days. She stopped 3 feet from Nathaniel. "Your Grace," Genevieve said, dipping into a curtsy. "Welcome home." Nathaniel didn't bow back. He looked stunned. "Lady Genevieve," he asked. His voice was deep, rough. "You stayed?" "I did. For 3 weeks." The weather was poor for traveling. Genevieve lied smoothly. "And the children required supervision." "Supervision," Nathaniel repeated. He looked at Henry. "Henry, come here." Henry stepped forward. He stopped just out of reach. He looked at Genevieve, not his father, checking if it was safe. Nathaniel saw the look. A flash of pain crossed his face, gone in an instant. "What is on your face, Henry?" "Flour, father." "And why is there flour on your face?" "We were hungry," Genevieve interrupted. She stepped slightly in front of Henry, a protective move she didn't even think about. Nathaniel's eyes narrowed. He looked at the space between her and his son. a space she now occupied. You were hungry, Nathaniel said slowly. So you went to the kitchens. That is against the rules. I'm afraid I've broken a great many rules in 3 weeks, Your Grace, Genevieve said honestly. We have eaten in the kitchen, we have played in the hall, and we have baked tarts. She extended the tray. Tart? The silence stretched. Nathaniel looked at the tarts. Then he looked at her. You stayed, he said again softly. With no host, no governess? For 3 weeks. Someone had to, Genevieve said. It was a challenge, a quiet one. You weren't here. So I was. The corner of his mouth twitched. Strawberry? He asked. Strawberry, Genevieve confirmed. Henry made the one on the left. Nathaniel froze. He looked at his son. You made this? Henry nodded, mute. Nathaniel reached out. He took the tart. He took a bite. He chewed slowly, his eyes never leaving Genevieve's face. It is adequate, he said. It is delicious, Sophie yelled from the stairs. And we like her, so you can't send her away. Nathaniel choked slightly. He looked at Sophie, then back at Genevieve. It seems, Nathaniel said, wiping a crumb from his lip, that my household has been thoroughly conquered in my absence. Not conquered, Your Grace, Genevieve said. Just fed. My mother, he said, gesturing to the older woman. The Dowager Duchess. Genevieve curtsied again. Your Grace. The Dowager tapped her cane. 3 weeks, she muttered. She survived 3 weeks with them, Nathaniel. That is a record. Indeed, Nathaniel said. Go wash your faces, the Dowager commanded. You look like peasants. Dinner is at 7. And Nathaniel, try not to frighten them. They have forgotten your scowl. Nathaniel flinched. Yes, Mother. He watched the children scurry up the stairs. Then he turned back to Genevieve. Lady Genevieve, Your Grace? Thank you, he said. It was stiff, awkward. For staying. I gave my word I would stay a month, Genevieve said. I do not break my word. No, Nathaniel said, looking at her intently. I see that you don't. He walked past her, smelling of rain and exhaustion. Genevieve let out a shaky breath. He didn't yell, Henry whispered, appearing at the top of the stairs. No, Genevieve said, looking at Nathaniel's retreating back. He is not angry, Henry. He is just a stranger in his own house. And she realized, with a jolt, that in 3 weeks she had become more at home here than he was. The drawing room was a battlefield of porcelain and silence. It was 4 p.m. Tea time. Genevieve sat on the velvet sofa. She had scrubbed the flour from her nose. She was wearing her second-best dress, a pale blue silk that made her look cool and composed. Opposite her sat the Dowager Duchess, Augusta. Her cane was resting against her knee. She looked like a queen holding court, and standing by the fireplace, looking uncomfortable in his own home, was Nathaniel. So, the Dowager said, setting down her cup. The click of china on saucer sounded like a gunshot. France. Yes, Your Grace, Genevieve said politely. And your father, the Marquis. He is well. He is well. He sends his regards. I am sure he does, the Dowager murmured. He was always a man who knew the value of an alliance. The subtext was clear. You are here for money and a title. Genevieve didn't flinch. My father values stability, Your Grace. As do I. Stability, Nathaniel repeated. He spoke for the first time. His voice was deep, vibrating through the quiet room. Is that why you are here, Lady Genevieve? For stability? Genevieve turned to look at him. He was watching her with that intense, grey gaze. He wasn't looking at her dress or her hair. He was looking at her hands, which were folded calmly in her lap. I'm here, Genevieve said honestly, because I believed I could be of use, and because I was told Hawthorne Hall was a place of tradition. It is a place of noise, apparently, Nathaniel said, but there was no heat in it. I heard laughter in the hallway earlier. Henry was laughing. Is that a crime, Your Grace? No, Nathaniel said softly. It is a miracle. He walked over to the tea cart. He didn't ring for a servant. He poured his own tea. You have changed things, he said, his back to her. In 3 weeks. I merely filled the silence, Genevieve said. Nature abhors a vacuum. Children abhor silence. And you? He turned. What do you abhor, Lady Genevieve? It was a personal question, too personal for a formal tea. Genevieve thought of Randall, of the empty compliments, of the cold perfection. I abhor loneliness, she said, and uselessness. Nathaniel stared at her. The air between them pulled tight. For a moment, the dowager didn't exist. It was just the two of them. Then you must have found this house very trying, Nathaniel said. It has been lonely for a long time. Not for the last 3 weeks, she countered. No, he agreed. Not for the last 3 weeks. He took a step toward her. My mother tells me you have only 1 week remaining of your visit, according to the agreement. The ticking clock. There it was. Yes, Genevieve said. Her heart gave a painful thud. 1 week. And then you return to France? Unless. She stopped. She could not say, unless you ask me to stay. That would be begging. Unless my plans change. I see. He looked at her for a long moment. He looked at the way the light hit her hair. He looked at her mouth. It was a look of hunger, but it was restrained. Like a man who wants to touch a painting but knows he isn't allowed. Suddenly, the door banged open. Genevieve! It was Tommy. He ran into the room holding a muddy rock. Tommy! The dowager gasped. We are at tea. Tommy ignored his grandmother. He ran straight to Genevieve. He ignored his father completely. Look. Tommy pressed the muddy rock onto Genevieve's silk skirt. It has sparkles. Nathaniel stepped forward, his face darkening. Thomas, you are dirtying her ladyship's dress. Genevieve put a hand up. It is fine. It is not fine, Nathaniel said. He is ruining your silk. Silk can be cleaned, Your Grace, Genevieve said, picking up the rock. But excitement, that is harder to replace. Look, Tommy, it is quartz. She smiled at the boy. It was a genuine, warm smile. Nathaniel watched. He watched her hand brush the mud off the boy's cheek. He watched his son lean into her touch. A son who usually hid from him. He looked jealous, not angry, jealous. He wanted that smile. He wanted that ease. He realized, with a shock that was visible on his face, that he was an outsider in this little circle of affection. You have won them, Nathaniel said quietly. It sounded like a defeat. I have not won anything, Your Grace, Genevieve said, looking up at him. I simply showed up. When you didn't, she didn't say. But he heard it. Go wash your hands, Thomas, Nathaniel said. His voice was gentle, but firm. Tommy ran off. Nathaniel looked at Genevieve. The jealousy was gone, replaced by something warmer, something dangerous. 1 week, he murmured. That is not very long, Lady Genevieve. No, she whispered. It is not. The dowager watched them both. She took a sip of her tea. Her eyes were sharp as flint. Well, the dowager announced, breaking the spell. If we only have 1 week, Nathaniel, we must make it count. The ball is on Saturday. You will dance the first dance with Lady Genevieve. Of course, Nathaniel said, never taking his eyes off Genevieve. It would be my honor. Genevieve felt a blush rise to her cheeks. I should go change, she said, standing up. My dress is muddy. Leave it, Nathaniel said. She paused. Your Grace? The mud, he said. It suits you. It proves you are real. He bowed. Genevieve fled the room. Her heart was racing so fast she thought she might faint. Outside, in the corridor, Lisette was waiting. Well, Lisette asked, did he eat you alive? No, Genevieve breathed, touching her chest. He didn't eat me, but Lisette. What? He looked at me. And I think he is starving, Genevieve whispered. Just as you said. Sunday morning, the rain had finally stopped. Walk with me, Nathaniel said. It wasn't a question. He stood at the bottom of the stairs, holding his gloves. Genevieve paused on the landing. With the children? If we must, he said. But he was looking at her. Though I believe they are currently chasing the gardener's cat. Then we should rescue the cat, Genevieve said, coming down the steps, and perhaps rescue you from the indoors. I do not need rescuing, Lady Genevieve. Everyone needs rescuing, Nathaniel, even dukes. She used his name. It slipped out. He didn't correct her. They walked out onto the terrace. The air was crisp, smelling of damp earth and roses. Ahead of them, Henry, Sophie, and Tommy were running toward the orchard. Eclair was barking at a squirrel. They are loud, Nathaniel observed. They are happy, Genevieve corrected. Is that the same thing? Usually. They walked in silence for a moment. The gravel crunched under their boots. My mother tells me, Nathaniel said, keeping his eyes on the horizon, that you wrote to your father yesterday. I did? To tell him you are returning. To tell him the weather has improved. He glanced at her. Just the weather. And the company, sir, she admitted. The company has improved significantly since Friday. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. I apologize for Friday. I was unprepared. You were shocked. There is a difference. I was shocked, he agreed. To find my house still standing, to find my son baking. He paused. To find you. Did you expect me to leave? Yes. Why? Because everyone leaves, he said simply. It is the nature of this house. It consumes people. It hasn't consumed me, Genevieve said. I'm quite inedible. Ask the cook. He laughed. It was a rusty sound, low and deep. I believe I tried a tart that suggested otherwise. Genevieve felt a flush heat her cheeks. She looked away toward the orchard. The children need a mother, Nathaniel. He stopped walking. I know. They need someone who stays, who doesn't mind the mud. I know, he repeated. He turned to face her. But who would stay? Knowing the history, knowing the gloom. Perhaps someone who isn't afraid of the dark, she whispered. He stepped closer. The space between them vanished. He was tall, so tall she had to tip her head back to look him in the eye. Are you afraid of the dark, Genevieve? I used to be, she said, but I have learned that the dark is just where the stars live. He reached out. His gloved hand hovered near her arm, then touched her elbow, a light, steady pressure. You have 4 days left, he said. His voice was rough. I know. 4 days is not enough time. For what? To convince you, he said. To convince you that the dark isn't so terrible. You don't need to convince me, she said, breathless. I'm already. Father, father. Sophie came crashing through the hedges, breathless, mud on her hem. Nathaniel stepped back instantly. The moment shattered. Sophie, he said, his voice reverting to the stern Duke. Do not run. But Tommy found a frog, Sophie yelled. A giant one. Come see. She grabbed Genevieve's hand. Come see, Lady Genevieve. You have to kiss it. Kiss it? Genevieve laughed, though her heart was still pounding from Nathaniel's nearness. Why? To turn him into a prince? I think, Genevieve said, daring to look back at him, that one prince is enough for one day. Nathaniel held her gaze. Go, he said softly. Go see the frog. I will wait here. Genevieve let Sophie pull her away. She looked back once. He was standing still on the path, watching her. Later that evening in the nursery, Genevieve was tucking Sophie into bed. Will you be here next Sunday? Sophie asked. She was hugging her bear. Next Sunday? Genevieve smoothed the quilt. That is a long way off. No, it isn't. It's 7 days. I'm supposed to leave on Friday, Sophie. You know that. But you like us, Sophie said. It was an accusation. And Father likes you. He laughed today. I heard him. Sophie. If you leave, Sophie whispered, will you come back? Genevieve looked at the little girl. She thought of Nathaniel's hand on her elbow. 4 days is not enough time. Sleep now, Genevieve whispered, kissing her forehead. You didn't answer, Sophie mumbled, her eyes closing. Genevieve blew out the candle. She walked to the door. She looked back at the sleeping child. I don't know the answer, she whispered to the darkness. She went into the hallway. Lisette was waiting. Well? Lisette asked. He touched my arm, Genevieve said. Her voice was shaking. And I think, Genevieve said, "that if he asks me to stay, Lisette, I'm going to say yes." "Good," Lisette said grimly. "Because the ball is in 3 days, and if he doesn't ask you by then, I'm going to hit him with his own cane." "He will ask," Genevieve said, touching her elbow where his hand had been. "I know he will." But down in the library, Nathaniel was pouring a drink. He was staring at the fire, and on his desk a letter had just arrived from a man named Randall, asking if he might attend the ball on Saturday. Nathaniel stared at the name. 4 days, he whispered to the fire. God help me. Saturday night. The great hall was transformed. Chandeliers dripped with candlelight. Musicians tuned their violins in the gallery. The scent of beeswax and roses filled the air. Upstairs, in the blue suite, Lisette tightened the laces of Genevieve's corset. "Breathe," Lisette commanded. "I cannot," Genevieve gasped. "You are trying to snap me in half." "I'm trying to make you armor," Lisette corrected. She pulled the final knot. "Tonight is not a party, Genevieve. It is a battlefield. You have 1 night to make him ask the question." Genevieve turned to the mirror. The dress was a deep, shimmering emerald silk. It was cut lower than she usually wore, exposing the curve of her neck. It was a dress meant for a duchess. "Do I look desperate?" Genevieve asked, touching her throat. "You look dangerous," Lisette said, placing the emerald necklace around her neck. "There is a difference." "I'm terrified, Lisette." "Good. Fear makes you sharp. Now go downstairs and ruin him." Genevieve walked to the top of the grand staircase. Below, the county had gathered. Lords in black coats, ladies in pastels. But Genevieve only saw one man. Nathaniel stood at the bottom of the stairs. He was wearing formal evening dress, the star of an order pinned to his chest. He looked devastating. He was talking to the dowager. Then he looked up. He stopped talking. The room seemed to quiet as Genevieve descended. Step by step, the emerald silk rustling like a whisper. She reached the bottom. Nathaniel stepped forward. He didn't bow immediately. He just stared. "Your Grace," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Genevieve," he said. No title, just her name. "Is it too much?" She touched her skirt. "It is exactly enough," he said. He offered his arm. "They are waiting for the first dance. I promised my mother." "You promised your mother?" she teased gently, taking his arm. "Is that the only reason?" He looked down at her. His eyes were dark. "I promised myself." They walked onto the floor. The music swelled. A waltz. He pulled her close, closer than was strictly proper. His hand burned through the silk of her waist. "Everyone is watching," she whispered as they spun. "Let them watch," Nathaniel said. "Let them see." "See what?" "That you're not a guest anymore." Genevieve's heart soared. "He's going to ask me. Tonight." "Nathaniel," she breathed. Your Grace." The voice cut through the music like a knife. It wasn't Henderson. It wasn't a guest. The music faltered. Couples stopped turning. Standing in the doorway of the ballroom, holding a glass of champagne, was a man. He was blonde, handsome, and wearing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Randall. Genevieve froze. She felt the blood drain from her face. Nathaniel stopped dancing. He felt her stiffen. "Genevieve, what is it?" "It cannot be," she whispered. Randall walked onto the floor. He moved with the easy confidence of a man who owned every room he entered. "My apologies for the lateness," Randall announced, his voice carrying. "I was detained, but I could not miss the debut of my dear old friend." He stopped in front of them. He bowed to Nathaniel, then looked at Genevieve. "Genevieve," Randall said, smiling. "Green. A bold choice. It always did make you look a trifle pale." Nathaniel stepped in front of her. "Who are you?" "Randall St. John," he said smoothly. "An old acquaintance of the lady. I heard she was trying her luck in England. I thought I would come and offer my support." "You were not invited," Nathaniel said. His voice was ice. "I am a guest of Lord Markham." Randall waved a hand toward a nervous-looking neighbor. "He insisted I come. He said there was a French curiosity staying at the hall. A curiosity? Nathaniel's hands curled into fists. Randall. Genevieve stepped out from behind Nathaniel. Her voice was shaking, but she forced it steady. Why are you here? To save you, darling, Randall said, lowering his voice so only they could hear. From embarrassment. You really think a duke is going to marry you after I returned you? You didn't return me, Genevieve hissed. I left. Details. Randall smirked. He reached out and touched the emerald necklace at her throat. A possessive, familiar gesture. You always were prone to delusions of grandeur. Playing mother to another man's children. It's beneath you, Jen. Nathaniel saw the hand. He saw the familiarity. He saw the way Genevieve was trembling, but he misread the trembling. He thought it was emotion. He thought it was love. She still feels for him, Nathaniel thought. The shock, the trembling. She's not over him. Nathaniel stepped back. Physically back. I see, Nathaniel said coldly. It seems you have matters to discuss. No. Genevieve turned to him, panic in her eyes. Nathaniel, no. He is nothing. He does not look like nothing, Nathaniel said. He looked at Randall, then at Genevieve. He looks like the past. I am the future, Randall laughed. Come now, Duke. Surely you can see when two people have unfinished business. Nathaniel's face shut down. The warmth from the waltz vanished. The man who had touched her elbow was gone, replaced by the lord of the manor. Enjoy the ball, Nathaniel said. I find the air in here stifling. He turned on his heel and walked away. Nathaniel, Genevieve called. He didn't stop. He walked straight out the terrace doors, disappearing into the dark. Randall chuckled. Well, that was easy. He gave up without a fight. Typical Englishman. Genevieve turned on him. The fear was gone, replaced by a fury so hot it nearly burned her skin. Get out, she said. Now, Jen, get out. She stepped closer to him. You think you broke me, Randall. You think I'm the same girl who cried when you left. I survived 3 weeks in a house with no master. I tamed a wild dog. I baked bread. You baked bread? Randall sneered. How quaint. I'm not quaint, she spat. I'm formidable, and you're a small, vain man who is ruining my carpet. She pointed to the door. Leave, before I have the servants throw you out. And believe me, they will do it. They like me more than they will ever like you. Randall blinked. He had never seen her like this. Fine, he sniffed, adjusting his cuffs. If you prefer to play the martyr. But he left you, Jen. Just like I did. Remember that. He turned and sauntered away. Genevieve stood alone in the middle of the ballroom. The music had stopped. Everyone was staring. She looked at the terrace doors. They were empty. He had left her. Just when she needed him to fight, he had walked away. Genevieve! It was Henry. He had snuck down to the railing of the gallery. He was looking down at her, his face pale. Is he coming back? Henry whispered loudly. Father? Genevieve looked up at the boy. She forced a smile onto her face. It felt like glass, shattering. I don't know, Henry, she whispered. She picked up her skirts and ran. Not toward the terrace, not toward Nathaniel. She ran toward the stairs, past the staring guests, past Lisette's outstretched hand. She ran to her room and locked the door, and for the first time in 3 weeks in the safety of the blue suite, Genevieve de la Fontaine sat on the floor and cried. Sunday morning. The house was silent. The decorations from the ball had been taken down. The music was gone. The magic had evaporated. In the blue suite, Genevieve was placing a folded dress into her trunk. You are making a mistake, Lisette said from the corner. She wasn't helping pack. She was sitting on a chair, arms crossed, protesting. I am fulfilling my contract, Genevieve said. Her voice was flat. The month is over on Friday. I'm simply leaving a few days early. He walked away, Lisette argued. He didn't send you away. He saw me with Randall. He saw Randall touch me, and he turned his back. Genevieve smoothed the silk. Action is a language, Lisette. His action said, I do not want to fight for this. Or, Lisette countered, his action said, I'm a foolish Englishman who thinks you still love the blonde peacock. It doesn't matter, Genevieve snapped. Then she softened. It doesn't matter, because if he trusted me, he would have stayed. If he loved me, he would have stayed. He did neither. She closed the trunk lid. It made a hollow thud. I will say goodbye to the children after their nap, Genevieve said. And then we go. And Nathaniel? Lisette used his name intentionally. I will write him a note, Genevieve said, looking at the desk. Anything more would be painful. Perspective switch. Nathaniel's study. 3 floors down, the library was dark. The curtains were drawn against the morning sun. Nathaniel poured a brandy. It was 11 a.m. The door creaked open. Get out, Nathaniel said without turning. I'm afraid I cannot do that, Your Grace, a quiet voice replied. It was Henderson. He walked into the room carrying a silver tray with a fresh decanter, though the current one was half full. He set the tray down with a deliberate clink. I did not ring for you, Henderson. No, Your Grace, you rarely ring when you need help, a habit you acquired after the late Duchess passed. Nathaniel stiffened. Henderson had served this family for 30 years. He was the only man alive who had seen Nathaniel cry. I do not need help, Nathaniel said, staring into his glass. I need silence. Then you shall have to fire me, Your Grace, Henderson said evenly. Because I cannot remain silent while you make a mistake that will haunt this house for another 10 years. Nathaniel turned slowly. Careful, Henderson. She's packing, Your Grace. The words hung in the air. Nathaniel's hand tightened on the glass. What? Lady Genevieve. Her maid requested the trunks be brought up. They leave at noon. Let her go, Nathaniel said, though his voice lacked conviction. She belongs with him. You saw them last night. The familiarity, the way she trembled when he touched her. I saw a lady who was terrified, Henderson corrected. Terrified of what? Of losing him. Terrified that you would not step in, Henderson said softly. I have watched people in this hall for 3 decades, Your Grace. I saw how she looked at you during tea. I saw how she looked at you in the garden. She looked at me like a host, Nathaniel muttered. Like a ticket to stability. She looked at you, Henderson said, stepping closer, like you were the sun, and she had been cold for a very long time. Nathaniel looked away, his jaw working. And if I go to her, and she rejects me, if she tells me she still loves him, then you will be exactly where you are now, Your Grace. Alone, drinking brandy in the dark. Henderson picked up the empty glass. But the children, Your Grace, they are not so good at being alone. Lord Henry has been sitting on her trunk for the last hour, refusing to move. He thinks if he sits there, she cannot leave. Nathaniel felt a physical blow to his chest. Henry. He is sitting on her trunk? He is. And Lady Sophie is crying in the linen closet. Henderson walked to the door. He paused. I have served this family a long time. I have never seen a woman make this house warm until she arrived. If you let that carriage leave, Your Grace, I fear the winter will never end. The door clicked shut. Nathaniel stood in the silence. He looked at the clock. 11:20. He looked at the brandy. Then he looked at the door. She's packing. He slammed the glass down on the desk. Hard. Damn it, he whispered. He started toward the door. He didn't run. Dukes do not run. But he walked with a stride that promised he would tear down any wall in his way. Genevieve walked into the hallway outside the nursery. The air was unnaturally quiet. Usually at this hour, it was chaos. But today, the silence was heavy, like the air before a thunderstorm. She found them in the center of the corridor. Henry was sitting on top of her leather traveling trunk, which the footman had tried to move. He sat with his arms crossed, staring at the wall. Sophie was sitting on the floor, holding Eclair so tight the poor dog looked ready to pop. And Tommy. Tommy was nowhere to be seen. Henry, Genevieve said softly. You have to get off the trunk. The footmen need to take it downstairs. No, Henry said. He didn't look at her. If I don't get off, they can't take it. If they can't take it, you can't leave. Henry, you said you wouldn't leave, Sophie burst out. Tears were streaming down her face. You said you weren't a guest. I said I would stay for a month, Genevieve said, her heart breaking. She knelt down in front of Sophie. "The month is not quite over, but circumstances have changed. Nathaniel made you leave," Henry said. He didn't say father. He used the name with bitterness. "I knew he would. He ruins everything." "No," Genevieve said firmly. "Do not say that. He's a good man." "Then why is he letting you go?" Henry looked at her, his eyes red. "Why isn't he stopping you?" Genevieve had no answer. That was the question that had been tearing her apart all morning. Why isn't Nathaniel stopping me? He has his reasons, Henry. Adults, we are complicated. We make mistakes. "It's not a mistake," Henry whispered. "It's stupid." Genevieve reached out and touched his knee. "You have to get off the trunk, Henry. Please, for me, do not make this harder." Henry looked at her. His lower lip trembled. Slowly, painfully, he slid off the trunk. As soon as he moved, 2 footmen appeared to carry it away. The sound of the trunk scraping against the floor was awful. "Where is Tommy?" Genevieve asked, looking around. "In the closet," Sophie hiccuped. Genevieve walked to the small closet door, the one Miss Miller used to lock. She opened it. Tommy was huddled in the back among the linens. He was holding the wooden soldier she had fixed for him. "Tommy?" He looked up. His eyes were huge and filled with panic. "You're going," he whispered. "I have to, chérie." "Take me," he said. It wasn't a question. It was a demand. "I can't take you, Tommy. This is your home. Nathaniel is here. He doesn't know how to fix the soldiers," Tommy said, "and he doesn't know about the angels when it thunders." Genevieve felt a tear slip down her cheek. She wiped it away quickly. She couldn't break down now. "He will learn," Genevieve promised. "I will leave him a list. I will tell him everything, about the angels, about the soldiers, about the tarts." She reached out her hand. "Come out, Tommy, please. I need a hug before I go." Tommy hesitated. Then he launched himself at her. He buried his face in her neck, holding on with a grip that was surprisingly strong. "Don't go," he mumbled into her dress. "Please don't go." Genevieve held him. She looked at Henry and Sophie, who joined the hug, a tangle of arms and tears. She realized then that Randall was wrong. He said she was playing mother. But this wasn't a game. This was real. She loved these children. She loved them more than she had ever loved anything in France. And she was leaving them. Because Nathaniel didn't love her enough to ask her to stay. "I have to go," she whispered, untangling herself gently. "The carriage is waiting." She kissed each of them on the forehead. A final benediction. "Be good," she told Henry. "Look after them." "I will," Henry said, trying to be the man of the house, though his face was wet. Genevieve stood up. She walked out of the nursery without looking back, because if she looked back, she would never leave. She went to the small writing desk in the hallway. Lisette was waiting with her cloak. "You have 5 minutes, Lisette said, checking the clock. "The driver is impatient." "I need to write one thing," Genevieve said. She took a piece of parchment. She dipped the quill. She didn't write Dear Duke. She didn't write Dear Nathaniel. That felt too intimate for a woman who was leaving. She just wrote, "You were right, the dark is not so terrible, but it is very lonely when you are the only one standing in it. Thank you for letting me know your children. They are the best of you. Do not let them forget that. Genevieve." She folded the paper. She didn't seal it. "Give this to Henderson," she told Lisette. "Tell him to give it to Nathaniel, after I am gone." Lisette took the note. She looked at Genevieve. "He is a fool," Lisette said. "No," Genevieve said, putting on her gloves. "He is just a man who is afraid. And I cannot save a man who does not want to be saved." She walked down the stairs. The great hall was empty. The door was open. The carriage was waiting. Genevieve stepped out into the sunlight. It was blinding. She climbed into the carriage. "Drive on," she said to the coachman. The carriage jolted forward. The wheels crunched on the gravel. Genevieve didn't look back at the house. She looked at her hands. They were empty. And 3 floors up in the nursery window, 3 children watched the dust settle on the driveway, waiting for a father who was running out of time. Nathaniel tore open the library door. The hallway was empty. The silence of the house hit him like a physical blow. It wasn't the peaceful silence of a library. It was the hollow silence of a tomb. "Henderson!" His voice echoed off the stone walls. Henderson appeared from the shadows of the main stairwell. He wasn't rushing. He looked grave. In his hand, he held a small, folded piece of parchment. "Where is she?" Nathaniel demanded. He was already moving toward the front doors. "She's gone, Nathaniel." Henderson didn't say, "Your Grace." He used the name he had used when Nathaniel was a boy, scraping his knees in the garden. Nathaniel stopped. He felt the blood drain from his face. "Gone? The carriage?" "It left 10 minutes ago. She was efficient." Nathaniel stared at the heavy oak doors. They were closed, locked against the world. "She left," Nathaniel whispered. "She actually left. She left this." Henderson extended the parchment. Nathaniel took it. His hands were shaking. He unfolded the paper. It smelled faintly of lavender, her scent. He read the words. "You were right. The dark is not so terrible. But it is very lonely when you are the only one standing in it. Thank you for letting me know your children. They are the best of you. Do not let them forget that." Nathaniel closed his eyes. Lonely. He had thought she left because she loved Randall. He had thought she left because she wanted a life of parties and emerald dresses. But she left because she thought he didn't want her. She had been standing in the dark, waiting for him to light a candle, and he had turned his back. "She thinks I abandoned her," Nathaniel said. His voice cracked. "You did," a voice said from the stairs. It was Henry. Nathaniel looked up. His son was standing on the landing. His face was blotchy from crying. Sophie and Tommy were behind him, clutching the banister like shipwreck survivors. "You let her go," Henry accused. "Just like you let everything go." Henry dashed. "She fixed the soldiers," Tommy screamed suddenly. "And you made her go away." The raw pain in his children's voices tore through Nathaniel's last defense. He looked at the note. He looked at his son. He realized he had spent 3 years protecting them from grief, only to cause the biggest grief of all. "Henderson," Nathaniel said. His voice changed. The hesitation was gone. The grief was gone, replaced by something cold and sharp. "Get Titan saddled." Henderson's eyes widened. "Titan, sir. He hasn't been ridden in—" "Saddle him, now." "Yes, sir." Henderson turned and ran toward the servants' entrance, a speed the old butler hadn't used in decades. Nathaniel turned to his children. He walked up the first 3 steps. He got down on one knee so he was eye level with Henry. "I made a mistake," Nathaniel said. Henry blinked. He had never heard his father admit a mistake. Not once. "I was afraid," Nathaniel continued. "I was afraid that if I asked her to stay, she would say no. So I didn't ask." "That was stupid," Sophie sniffed. "Yes," Nathaniel agreed. "It was incredibly stupid." He reached out and put a hand on Henry's shoulder. "But I'm going to fix it. I'm going to bring her back." "What if she doesn't want to come back?" Henry asked, his voice small. "Then I will beg," Nathaniel said simply. "I will beg until she changes her mind." He stood up. He looked at the heavy oak doors. "Stay here," he commanded. "Watch the driveway. Do not move." "We won't," Henry promised. Nathaniel turned and ran. He sprinted through the great hall, out the side door, and across the gravel toward the stables. The stable master was already bringing Titan out, a massive black stallion tossing his head, sensing the urgency. Nathaniel didn't wait for a mounting block. He swung into the saddle. "She has a 10-minute head start, Your Grace," the stable master shouted. "The carriage is heavy, but the road to the village is muddy." "I will catch her," Nathaniel said. He gathered the reins. "And if she is already at the train station?" "Then I will ride to London," Nathaniel swore. He kicked the horse. Titan surged forward, hooves tearing up the turf. Nathaniel leaned low over the horse's neck. The wind whipped his hair. The note was tucked securely in his breast pocket, against his heart. "The dark is not so terrible." "I'm coming, Geneviève," he whispered into the wind. "Don't you dare get on that train." The road to the village was a ribbon of mud cutting through the forest. Nathaniel didn't feel the cold wind. He didn't feel the mud splashing onto his boots. He only felt the terrifying rhythm of his own heart. Thump, thump. Too late. Thump, thump. Too late. Ahead, through the trees, he saw it. The dark shape of the carriage, swaying as it navigated a turn. Tighten, go! He leaned forward, urging the horse into a gallop. Inside the carriage, Geneviève was staring out the window, though she saw nothing but her own reflection. She was not crying. She was done crying. She was planning. I will go to my aunt in Paris. I will write to Papa. I will— My lady! Lisette grabbed her arm. Look! Geneviève looked. A rider was thundering up beside the carriage. A black horse. A man with wild dark hair, his coat flying open. It is him, Lisette breathed. A slow, satisfied smile spread across her face. He is ruining his boots. Good. Nathaniel, Geneviève whispered. He was shouting at the driver. Halt! Stop the carriage! The driver pulled hard on the reins. The carriage lurched and skidded to a halt in the mud. Before the wheels had even stopped turning, Nathaniel was off his horse. He hit the ground running. He yanked the carriage door open. Geneviève stared at him. He looked wild. His cravat was crooked. He was breathing hard, his chest heaving. He looked nothing like the Duke who had coldly turned his back in the ballroom. You, he gasped, gripping the doorframe. You are— Fast. I have a schedule to keep, Geneviève said. Her voice was trembling, but she held her chin high. Why are you here, Nathaniel? Did I steal the silver, or did I forget to sign the exit papers? You forgot, he said, climbing into the carriage uninvited. To say goodbye to me. I left a note. A note, he scoffed. He pulled the crumpled parchment from his pocket. This. The dark is lonely. That is not a goodbye, Geneviève. That is an accusation. It is the truth, she said. You let me go. You saw me standing there, humiliated by Randall, and you walked away. I walked away because I thought you loved him. The words exploded in the small space. Geneviève blinked. What? I saw him touch you, Nathaniel said, his voice dropping to a raw whisper. I saw you trembling. I saw the history between you, and I thought I was the intruder. I thought you wanted him back. You thought I wanted Randall. Geneviève laughed. It was a sharp, incredulous sound. The man who treated me like a doll, the man who left me because my dowry wasn't large enough. She leaned forward. I was trembling, Nathaniel, because I was angry, and because I was waiting for you to step in. I was waiting for the man She stopped. The man you what? Nathaniel asked. He stepped closer. The carriage was suddenly very small. The man I respected, she finished, looking away. You are lying, Nathaniel said softly. I am a French noblewoman. We are excellent liars. Lisette, Nathaniel said, not taking his eyes off Geneviève. Would you mind giving us a moment? Take the driver for a walk. Lisette looked at Geneviève. Then she looked at Nathaniel. She saw the desperation in his eyes. Do not make me walk in the mud for nothing, Your Grace, Lisette warned. She opened the door and hopped out. Silence filled the carriage. Just the sound of the horses panting outside and the rain starting to tap on the roof. I was afraid, Nathaniel admitted. He sat on the bench opposite her. My wife. She didn't love me, Geneviève. It was an arrangement. She tolerated me. When she died, I promised myself I would never again try to force affection from a woman who didn't feel it. Geneviève looked at him. The arrogance was gone. He was just a man exposing his old wounds. So when I saw you with him, Nathaniel continued, I assumed history was repeating. I assumed I was the second choice, the safe choice. You are the safe choice, Geneviève whispered. Nathaniel flinched. He looked down at his hands. I see. Then I was right to— Because you are safe, she interrupted. She reached out and took his hand. It was cold. Randall was danger. He was sharp edges and mirrors. You are warm tarts. You are muddy boots. You are a father who scares away the thunder. She squeezed his hand. I don't want dangerous, Nathaniel. I want safe. I want real. I want the man who ate a burnt tart to make his son feel proud. Nathaniel looked up. His eyes were shining. I am a difficult man, he warned. I am moody. I work too much. I have a mother who thinks she is the Queen of England. I am stubborn, Genevieve countered. I bake when I am stressed, and I come with a very small, very loud dog. I like the dog, Nathaniel smiled. A real smile. And the children? Genevieve asked. They need a mother, not a governess. They don't want a mother, Nathaniel said. He moved from the opposite bench to sit beside her. They want you. They want you. Henry is sitting on the front steps, refusing to come inside until you return. Tommy is in the closet. Oh no, Genevieve gasped. Come back, Nathaniel said. He lifted her hand to his lips. He kissed her knuckles. Not for them. For me. Come back because the house is too quiet without you. Come back because I don't want to stand in the dark anymore. Genevieve looked at him. She saw the fear he had overcome to ride here. She saw the love he was finally brave enough to offer. You ruined my exit, she whispered. It was very dramatic. I will ruin all your exits, Nathaniel promised. I intend to be the only door you walk through. He leaned in. He hesitated, giving her the choice. Genevieve didn't hesitate. She closed the distance. The kiss wasn't like the polite pecks Randall used to give. It was desperate. It tasted of rain and relief. It was the seal on a promise made 3 weeks ago in a messy kitchen. When they broke apart, Nathaniel rested his forehead against hers. Let's go home, he whispered. Yes, Genevieve said. Let's go home. Outside, Lisette watched the carriage door stay closed. She smiled, opened her umbrella, and patted the horse's nose. Well, she told Titan, it looks like we are staying in England. The carriage ride back to Hawthorne Hall was slow. The mud was deep, and the horses were tired. But inside, for the first time in years, the silence was comfortable. Nathaniel held Genevieve's hand. He didn't let go once. He held it like it was the only anchor keeping him on earth. They will be watching, Nathaniel said as the house came into view. Who? The children. I told them to watch the driveway. He squeezed her hand. I told them I would beg if I had to. And did you? Genevieve teased gently. Beg. I believe I climbed into a moving carriage and admitted my own stupidity, Nathaniel said. For a duke, that is the equivalent of groveling. Genevieve smiled. It was very effective groveling. The carriage pulled up to the front steps. Before the footman could even reach the handle, the front doors of the hall burst open. It wasn't Henderson. It wasn't the Dowager. It was an avalanche of children. Henry was first, skidding on the gravel. Sophie was right behind him, and little Tommy was running as fast as his legs could carry him, holding his soldier. Nathaniel opened the carriage door and stepped out. He turned to help Genevieve, but she didn't wait for his hand. She stepped down onto the muddy drive. You came back, Sophie screamed. She hit Genevieve's waist with the force of a cannonball. Oof! Genevieve laughed, wrapping her arms around the girl. Careful, chérie, you will knock us both into the mud. We don't care about mud, Sophie sobbed. We thought you were gone forever. Tommy arrived next. He didn't scream. He just grabbed Genevieve's skirt and buried his face in the silk. He was shaking. Genevieve looked down at him. She placed her hand on his head. I am here, Tommy. I am here. And then there was Henry. The 11-year-old heir stood a few feet away. He looked at Genevieve. Then he looked at his father. He looked at Nathaniel's muddy boots, his wind-blown hair, and the way he was looking at Genevieve. You caught her, Henry said. I did, Nathaniel said. He walked over to his son. I told you I would. Henry looked at his father. For years, he had only seen the Duke, the man who demanded silence, the man who was always away. Now he saw a man who had ridden a horse into the ground to bring back the woman they loved. Good, Henry whispered. His voice cracked. That was good. Nathaniel reached out. He hesitated for a second, then pulled Henry into a hug. It was stiff at first. They were out of practice. But then Henry melted, leaning his head against his father's chest. I'm sorry, Nathaniel murmured into his son's hair. I'm sorry I was blind. It's okay, Henry mumbled. You fixed it. From the top of the stairs, a cane tapped rhythmically against the stone. They all looked up. The Dowager Duchess was standing there. She looked at the muddy carriage. She looked at the crying children. She looked at her son, who was covered in dirt and holding his family together. "Well," the Dowager said loudly, "ideally, we greet guests with less hysteria, but I suppose this will do." "She is not a guest, Mother," Nathaniel called out. He took Genevieve's hand again, pulling her and the children toward the stairs. "She is staying." "Is she?" The Dowager looked at Genevieve. "For another month?" "No," Genevieve said, walking up the steps, her heart full to bursting. "For a lifetime, if you will have me." The Dowager's stern face cracked. A small, genuine smile appeared. "Have you?" she scoffed. "My dear, you are the only one who has managed to get my son to run in 10 years. We would be fools to let you leave." She stepped aside. "Welcome home, Genevieve." They walked into the great hall. It felt different. The shadows didn't seem as deep. The stone didn't feel as cold. Henderson was standing by the fireplace. He was holding a silver tray with 5 glasses. 3 contained lemonade. 2 contained champagne. "I took the liberty, Your Grace," Henderson said, bowing low. "I assumed a toast might be in order." "You assumed correctly, Henderson," Nathaniel said. He took a glass. He handed one to Genevieve. He looked at his children, who were wiping their eyes and drinking lemonade. He looked at his mother, and then he looked at Genevieve. "To the dark," Nathaniel said softly, raising his glass. Genevieve smiled, clinking her glass against his. "To the dark," she repeated, "and the stars that live in it." "What does that mean?" Sophie asked, wrinkling her nose. "It means," Nathaniel said, looking at his daughter, "that we are going to be happy, Sophie. Finally." Later that night, after the children were asleep, really asleep this time, no one hiding in closets, Nathaniel and Genevieve stood on the balcony of the blue suite. The moon was out. The storm had passed completely. "My father will be pleased," Genevieve said, leaning against the railing. "The alliance is secured." "Forget the alliance," Nathaniel said. He stood behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, pulling her back against his chest. "I am not marrying you for France. I am marrying you for me." "And for the tarts?" "The tarts are a bonus." He kissed the sensitive spot just below her ear. Genevieve shivered. "Nathaniel, do you really think we can do this? Be a family, after everything?" He turned her around in his arms. His face was serious, illuminated by the moonlight. "I think," he said, "that we have already done the hard part. We survived the silence. Now we just have to live in the noise." "I like noise," Genevieve whispered. "Good," Nathaniel said, lowering his head to hers. "Because I plan to spend the rest of my life telling you how much I love you, and I plan to be very loud about it." He kissed her, slow, deep, and full of promise. Down the hall, in the nursery, Eclair was curled up at the foot of Tommy's bed. Henry was sleeping with a smile on his face, and the ghost of the lonely Duke was gone, banished by a woman who refused to leave. The winter was over. The wedding day dawned bright and clear. The kind of English summer day that poets lied about, but which occasionally, miraculously, actually happened. In the blue suite, the air was thick with lavender and excitement. "Stand still," Lisette commanded. She was placing a wreath of white roses on Genevieve's head. There was no heavy tiara, no stiff diamond crown, just roses. "I am shaking," Genevieve admitted. She looked at her reflection. The dress was white lace, French silk, but simple. It was a dress for a woman, not a statue. "You are shaking because you skipped breakfast," Lisette said, adjusting a curl. "Or because you are happy." "I think it is happiness," Genevieve whispered. "It feels light." "I didn't expect love to feel so light, Lisette. I thought it was supposed to be heavy, burdened." "That was Randall," Lisette said, stepping back to admire her handiwork. "Randall was heavy luggage. Nathaniel is wings." A knock at the door. It opened, and Genevieve's father, the Marquis, stepped in. He looked older, tired from the journey, but when he saw her, his eyes softened. "Genevieve," he said in French. You look radiant, Papa, she smiled. The Duke, the Marquis said, clearing his throat. He speaks very highly of you. He told me, quite bluntly, that he is the lucky one in this arrangement. I expected an arrogant Englishman. I found a man who looks at you as if you hung the moon. He is a good man, Papa. I see that. The Marquis offered her his arm. Are you ready? Yes. They walked down the grand staircase, out through the terrace doors, and toward the garden chapel. The guests were there, half the county. The dowager sat in the front row, looking victorious in purple silk. But Genevieve didn't look at the guests. She looked at the altar. Nathaniel stood there. He wasn't wearing his stiff formal coat. He was wearing a simpler morning suit. He looked relaxed. He looked happy, and he wasn't alone. Standing right next to him were Henry, Sophie, and Tommy. Usually children sat in the pews with the nursemaids, but Nathaniel had insisted. They are part of this promise, he had said. They stand with us. As Genevieve started down the aisle, Tommy saw her. She's here, he shouted, forgetting to whisper. The guests chuckled. Eclair, who was sitting at Tommy's feet wearing a white satin bow, barked in agreement. Genevieve reached the altar. Her father kissed her cheek and placed her hand in Nathaniel's. Nathaniel's hand was warm. Solid. You came, he whispered, a teasing glint in his grey eyes. I was worried you might make another run for the carriage. I told you, she whispered back. I'm done with exits. I'm only interested in entrances. The vicar cleared his throat. We are gathered here today. The ceremony passed in a blur of sunlight and promises, but when it came time for the rings, there was a pause. The ring? The vicar asked. Nathaniel looked down at Henry. Henry stepped forward. He held out a small velvet pillow, but before he let Nathaniel take the ring, the boy looked up at Genevieve. Do you promise? Henry whispered. It wasn't part of the ceremony. It was real. The church went silent. Genevieve knelt down, right there in her white lace, heedless of the grass stains. She looked Henry in the eye. I promise, she said loud enough for everyone to hear. I promise to stay. I promise to listen. And I promise to bake tarts whenever it rains. Henry smiled, a wide, unguarded smile that looked exactly like his father's. Okay, Henry said. He handed the ring to Nathaniel. You can marry her now. Nathaniel pulled her to her feet. His eyes were bright with unshed tears. With this ring, Nathaniel said, his voice rough with emotion, I thee wed. With my body, I thee worship, and with all my worldly goods, I thee endow. He slid the gold band onto her finger. It settled there as if it had always belonged. I pronounce you, the vicar said, smiling, man and wife. Your Grace, you may kiss the Duchess. Nathaniel didn't wait. He pulled her close and kissed her, sweetly, deeply, thoroughly. A kiss that sealed the cracks in the house and chased away the last of the shadows. The guests cheered. Sophie threw rose petals into the air. Tommy clapped, and somewhere in the back, Henderson wiped his eyes with a pristine handkerchief. 1 year later. The nursery was noisy. Thunder rumbled outside, a summer storm rolling across the hills. But inside, there was no fear. Tommy was sitting on the rug, building a fortress out of blocks. The angels are bowling, he announced as a clap of thunder shook the window. Strike, Henry yelled, knocking over a tower. Henry, be nice, Sophie scolded. In the armchair by the fire, Genevieve sat with a book. Eclair was snoring on her feet. The door opened. Nathaniel walked in. He was dripping wet, fresh from riding. He stopped in the doorway, looking at the scene. The noise, the mess, the warmth. He looked at Genevieve. She looked up and smiled. A calm, contented smile that reached her eyes. You are wet, she observed. I got caught in the storm, he said, walking over to her. He didn't care about his muddy boots. He leaned down and kissed her forehead. Is everyone all right? We are perfect, she said. He rested his hand on her stomach, which was rounded with new life. Their child. Dew in the autumn. And him? Nathaniel asked softly. Or her. Dancing. Genevieve said, placing her hand over his. Every time the thunder claps, the baby kicks. I think we have another storm chaser. Nathaniel laughed. He knelt down beside her chair, resting his head against her shoulder, watching his 3 children play in the firelight. I received a letter today, he said quietly. Oh? From whom? From Randall, he said. He heard the news. About the baby. He sent his congratulations. Genevieve paused. She looked at the rain lashing against the window. She thought of the cold, perfect life she almost had. And then she looked at the warm, messy, beautiful life she had chosen. That was kind of him, she said simply. I hope he finds happiness. He needs it. He asked if I ever regretted it, Nathaniel said. Marrying the girl he left behind. Genevieve looked at her husband. And what did you say? Nathaniel smiled. He kissed her hand, then the baby bump, then her lips. I told him, Nathaniel whispered, that I have never regretted a single moment since the day I ate a burnt strawberry tart. It wasn't burnt, Genevieve corrected, laughing. It was caramelized. It was perfect, Nathaniel agreed. Just like this. He stood up and clapped his hands. Right then, who wants to go to the kitchen? I believe it is raining, which means chocolate, the children screamed in unison. As they ran out the door, thundering down the hallway, Nathaniel offered his hand to his wife. After you, my lady, he said. Genevieve took his hand. She stood up, heavy with life, light with love. After you, my love, she said. And together, they walked out of the nursery and into the noise, leaving the door wide open, because in this house, no one was ever locked away again.
The tea is very sweet.
I'm glad you like it. The garden is lovely today, don't you think?
It is, but the view here is even more beautiful.